the lines were very, very blurred. Not to know who's, of course, everybody knew who's secular, who's religious, but like family, where you had a greatest rabbi was the leader of the generation. And in this particular case, Yossi ben Yoezer, the greatest rabbi of the generation, his nephew was a Hellenizer, was someone who was a wicked person, and his name was Yakum. He was the nephew of Rabbi Yossi ben Yoezer, the Nasi, and he was riding a horse on Shabbos. And the rabbi, his uncle, was condemned to death by hanging because he was teaching Torah, whatever. He was, was not following the Greek, requirements or restrictions on spreading Torah, and he was condemned to death. And he was put on a horse to go to the gallows. Both were riding on a horse on Shabbos. Obviously, one was by coercion, one was by will. So the nephew sees his uncle. Instead of having pity, the nephew goes over to his uncle. He says, "Yeah, see the horse that," this is based off of Bereshis Rabbah, it's a medrash, "that see the horse that my master has given me." Right, the Greek governor has given me. I'm sitting over here riding a horse on Shabbos, versus your master, which means God. You're riding towards the gallows. You're riding towards your death. So Rabbi Yossi replied, he says, if those who anger God are the recipients of such honor, meaning like yourself, then imagine the amount of honor that he would give to people that follow his will. And then Yakum, his nephew, responded. He says, "Is there anyone who listens to God better than you? You're the greatest person of the generation." So and look at your situation. And then Rabbi Yossi responded. He says, "And if this is what Kadosh Baruch Hu does, if this is what God does to those who follow His will, imagine what He does to those that anger Him." Meaning, he was telling he was being led to his death, and instead of going and begging his nephew, "Maybe you could save me," he was giving his nephew musar. He was going and criticizing his nephew to go and do repentance. And his nephew really took it to heart. These words really affected his nephew. And it was just like a slap in the face, a wake-up call, that he decided that he's going to do tshuva. And not only that, he decided he's going to punish himself. Again, not the way that you're supposed to do, but what he decided that he's going to do is he's going to give himself the 4 types of death penalty: stoning, burning, beheading, and choking, all in once. How did he do that? He went and he took a beam, put it into the ground. He hung a rope from it, and then under it, he made a pile of firewood, and then he surrounded it with stones and a little bit higher. And then he lit the fire, and he put a sword right in the middle of that, of the fire. And he went and he hung himself right on top of that and right on top of the stones, like there was like levels. What happened is that he's sitting over there hanging on this wooden beam with this rope on top of this fire, and there's a sword sticking out. The rope burned, and it eventually snapped. His nephew fell onto the sword, and then the stones collapsed around him, and then eventually he was burnt. He was burnt to death. So he took upon himself the four misas of Bezdin. And Rabbi Yossi, when he was going in and out of consciousness, when he was being put to death, he saw the vision of his nephew was flying towards heaven. And he commented, and he says, Yakum, he went, and his nephew, he preceded me to Gan Eden in a short time.